Hello everybody, Chris Haggeseth, I'm back again, and I've got a very special guest for us today. Back in about 1998, 1999, I was at a low point in my life, and I had been too long without a hunting dog, and I just happened to come across this show on cable of this guy dressed very nicely with a wonderful Llewellyn setter. And he kept on saying things like, never spoil your bird dog. And I looked at this show and I was absolutely enchanted, as I think many of you were. I turned to my wife, Laurel, and I said, I think in my life what I would really like to do is just go hunting with Hank. Figuratively speaking. And anyway, Laurel, always encouraging me, said, well, do it. And on December 31st of 1999, I shot a pilot. And by the following October, I was on the same channel with Dez Young with my show Bird Dogs Forever, and he with Hunting with Hank. I've had the opportunity to meet Dez on a couple of occasions, meet Hank. Hank was a sweet dog. It was a special moment watching Jesse and Hank meet each other. I only regret we never had a chance to make a show or hunt together. But anyway, over these years, I've had the occasions and the pleasure of touching base with Dez from time to time. Interestingly, we crossed paths, one or the other of us having hunted where the other one had been. And one true thing I can tell you about everybody who has had an encounter with Dez is the following. He is a true gentleman. So with that, I've got Dez on the line, and I think we're going to have to see how he handles all these compliments. But man, they're heartfelt. Dez, good morning.
Good morning, Chris, and thank you so much. That was a very nice introduction.
Yeah, well, it's all true, too, Dez. I think you made the televising of upland bird hunting into a beautiful sport.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it. I mean, you dressed well. You had enormous respect for your dog. You had nice music, beautiful scenes. You had your family involved a lot. How did you get the concept to do this?
Oh, it sort of gelled over a number of years when Hank was a puppy through his first couple of bird hunting seasons, when I noticed that every time I went out with Hank with a client or friends or family, that they were just enthralled with him, and not just for his bird hunting ability, but because he was a nice guy and he was beautiful to watch. And so the concept of starring a dog as the featured performer on an upland bird hunting series came to me, and that's when I developed the concept of Hunting with Hank and put the pilot show together.
Did you market it to a number of networks, or just OLN?
No, actually, I didn't. I went right to the Outdoor Life Network. They were brand new at the time, looking for programming, and it just, the timing was perfect.
You've been with OLN ever since then, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And you're still currently there?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. There's been a lot of change in the television scene, as we both know. Certainly, TNN was a big producer back when we were starting, and they're out of the business completely.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sadly so.
Yeah, sadly so. There's one coming Sportsman's Channel. It doesn't have the big distribution yet. They're trying to do it, and certainly the Men's Channel has some things now. So it's a shifting scene. Let's get back to Hank. How did you get Hank in the first place? Where did you get him, and why did you select a Llewellyn setter?
I had raised Labradors only on an amateur basis, of course, for about 20 years, and I loved my labs. But when Karen Ann, my wife, had decided she wanted to join me in the uplands, she could not keep up with a Labrador when they got birdie, and so
right.
I was the only one getting any shooting, which was no fun. So when I lost my last Labrador, that's when I researched all of the pointing breeds and narrowed it down to the Llewellyn setter, and then contacted the gentleman who had written a book on the history of Llewellyns, who is also a breeder, and asked for a puppy.
How did you narrow that? There's so many nice pointing breeds out there.
Many.
What happened in your mind to narrow yourself down to the Llewellyn setter?
The history of the Llewellyn indicated to me that the person after whom those dogs are named, Percy Llewellyn, had wanted a close hunting easily trained, biddable, family member bird dog who would hunt for a walking hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And he took several different breeds from around Europe to blend together to get the Llewellyn, which after many generations was given his name. And they were bred specifically for people like you and me, Chris, people who weren't professionals, who would train maybe one dog every 10 years and would have the dog as a member of the family and would be a dog that would hunt in front of a walking hunter as opposed to one who would be on horseback, for instance, like in the field trials.
Now, help me understand this background of the Llewellyn setter. I'm unfamiliar with it. I always thought that it was just an offshoot of the English setter. Is that incorrect?
Well, actually, that's close. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a breeder, but as I understand it, the English setter is the primary ancestor of the Llewellyn, and they're really basically cousins, if you will.
Okay.
And the Llewellyns are a different strain, not a different breed.
And as I know, AKC does not recognize Llewellyn. You have to go to the field trial stud book, and then you see them broken out as a specific breed.
Right.
Okay. What's it like living at home with a Llewellyn?
Oh, gosh, they are. Well, first I should tell your listeners that we have a really good vacuum cleaner. Because these boys, I mean, they're terrible shedders, but they're certainly worth the effort. The feathering is beautiful, as you know. And,
oh, yes.
And they're Hank and now his son Dash, who's laying down here by my feet now, they're just members of the family.
Yep. Where do they sleep?
They sleep in our bedroom.
Yep.
On their own bed.
On their own bed. Yeah, well, Jessie sleeps partly in her own bed and partly in our bed. And Labs, a black lab shedding, shows a lot of fur, too. And my wife, buy these lint rollers with adhesive on it. She buys them by the case.
Yes, we have a number of them also.
Training Hank, what did it take?
Oh, gosh. Well, the first thing I realized when I switched from a retriever breed to a pointing breed was that the training was different. And so I had to do quite a bit of learning to be able to take Hank and train him into the bird dog that his viewers saw for so many years. And I made a number of mistakes, but Hank persevered through all of it, and we got some wonderful shows together because of his ability to adjust to my amateur training. It was a lot of work, but I enjoyed every minute of it.
Right. I had a show with a woman with a pair of Llewellyns, and it was really interesting. Her story, she was never a hunter. She got these two Llewellyns because she thought they were pretty. She took them for walks in the country, and she kept on seeing them point. And she said, well, and so she wound up going out and getting hunter safety, getting a shotgun. She thought, they want to do that. I should do something for them. And those dogs had virtually no specific training, and yet they worked as a pair, and one of them in particular, if they're both pointing and a bird like a chucker or something was running, he would run around, relocate, and trap that bird.
Uh-huh.
She had never done a thing to instruct that dog in doing that.
Uh-huh.
So there's a lot inherent in that breed that is pretty darn intelligent.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I felt, too, as an amateur trainer, that one of the things I needed a dog that would be relatively easy to train, because not being a professional, I was certain with Hank, and I felt the same way with Dash when I trained him a few years ago, that there would be all kinds of mistakes happening, and I needed a dog that would be adjustable to all of that.
What technique of training did you follow? A specific book or a specific philosophy of training?
Yes, I did. I picked out Richard Wolter's book, Gun Dog, which at the time, now remember Hank, he's been gone for 2 years now, and I got him as a puppy in 92. So at that time, Richard Wolter's book was very controversial because he said you can start training dogs at 7 weeks of age. And boy, that really got the fur flying among the professional dog trainers around the United States. But I used it because I felt as an amateur I needed every moment I could get with Hank. And so I picked that book and followed Wolter's techniques, including starting Hank at 7 weeks of age, and then 10 years later when I got his puppy Dash, I did the same thing with Dash.
Okay. When you train them, what kind of birds do you wind up doing? Pigeons and some chucker and things like that, and train them that way?
I started with pigeons and used those first because they're fairly easy to obtain, and I live in a metro area, and so it's difficult to get game birds, and so, but it was not that difficult to get pigeons, and then find an area just outside of the metro area where I could release some birds for him and have him learn how to point pigeons first, and then we moved to small game birds like chuckers and quail, and then we moved as he grew and gained more confidence, then we moved into larger birds.
Sure.
But most of the professional trainers, Chris, say if you're going to have a bird dog, you have to expose it to birds at some point, and you have to do a lot of that.
Yep.
And so I really worked at that part of Hank's training.
That's certainly been my impression. Is nothing can beat experience with feathers and the smell of feathers.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, let's go back in your life a little, Dez. Where'd you grow up?
I grew up on a ranch in eastern Oregon near the town of Pendleton. And spent many years with my 2 6-guns on my hips, racing through the open wheat fields of our ranch, chasing bad guys away.
When did you start hunting birds?
Before I could shoot, my family were avid hunters and fishers, and so my Uncle Bill and my cousin Gary, anytime they went bird hunting, whether it was for upland birds or waterfowl, they'd swing by and pick me up even when I was just a little guy, and I'd go out with them, and if we were hunting waterfowl, I'd help them set up decoys.
Mm-hmm.
I would sit in the blinds with them, and if we were in the uplands, they would use me as their bird dog, and I would go out and beat the brush for my uncle and my cousin, and thrill at the explosive flush of a pheasant. Or that great thunderous roar when a covey of valley quail would get up, and it just got in my veins.
Yep. So when did you actually put a shotgun on your shoulder and start becoming the hunter yourself?
I was 12, and at Christmas my mother purchased for me a gun that I don't think is available anymore, a Marlin 12-gauge over and under.
Really?
And that was my first shotgun, and I still have it. It's in my gun cabinet. And I started hunting at, well, I guess you could call it hunting. I would go out on my own through the wheat fields of eastern Oregon, wandering around in September looking for doves, and then poke around the edges for pheasants in October, and then in November I would go out and lay out along a fence line out in some wheat fields looking for geese to pass by. Never very successfully, unless I was out with my family. Then I'd get more successful.
Right. Well, during those days when you were hunting as a young person, did you have any dog to help you out?
We had Springer Spaniels who were members of our family, and they would come out with me when I hunted, and they would, of course, do their very best because they're a hunting breed, and I had no idea what I should or shouldn't do for them, but they were always very enthusiastic, and they helped actually quite a bit. What's
your career path been from the time that you graduated until you started doing television with Hank?
Well, gosh, I started as a professional singer when I was 19 in the folk music era. I had gone to college out of high school, and then I joined this folk singing group called the Statesmen, and we started performing and making money, so I left college. That was a huge mistake because then Uncle Sam asked me to come spend some time with him.
Who did you serve with?
The Army.
Uh-huh.
And so then after, while actually during my military service, I continued to perform at NCO and officers' clubs around the various bases where I was stationed. And then when I got out of the service, I had my first television show in Colorado Springs, Colorado, for a CBS affiliate there, co-hosting a children's program with Ronald McDonald. And then from there, went back to college to get my degree in speech communications, and while I was doing that, I was asked to produce and host a television show here in Portland on another CBS affiliate here, which I did for several years while I was getting my degree. And then I left to go into business and had decided at that point that I would not go back into television unless I could do it in a format that I wanted to do, not something that a network affiliate would ask me to do. So I had basically decided that I was done performing, and then I met Hank, and then I came up with the Hunting with Hank idea.
I bet you it's the best and most happy career you've ever had in your life.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Hank and his boy Dash have provided me with some great thrills and an opportunity to see some beautiful country, and in addition to that, the shows that we did with Hank and Dash led to some specials that we've done overseas on bird hunting because of the popularity of our work, and so it's been quite an addition to my various careers.
Well, Des, this is really interesting. We're going to close this interview now, but I'm going to have you back because
okay, I look forward to it.
Yeah, there's a lot more for our listeners to know about you, and I think this gives such a opportunity for them to have an insight into the man who's behind the phrase, never, ever, ever spoil your bird dog. Des, I was out last weekend. I was taping the North American Gun Dog Association National Championships. And two guys, and I've had this happen, they say, well, are you the guy that says never ever to spoil your hunting dog? I said, well, no, I believe in that very strongly, and I spoil my dog terribly, but no, that's Dez Young. Hey, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed the opportunity of getting to know Dez. We're going to have him back another time, and I think this is an interesting guy who illustrates the qualities that we most find endearing about our sport. And we'll talk more about that the next time we have the interview. But for today, so long for now, and I'll see you soon.